Because they'll be
sounds
like,
nodding my head at you.
Yep.
Every so often. All right, so I don't have like an agenda or anything like that.
So
and
cute.
I was kind of thinking more broad, just to talk about numbers and math, and then go a little bit more specific. Basically looking at more of a foundational skills. So the four operations, addition, subtraction, multiplying, and dividing. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then feel free to interject or just say like, hey, I had somebody last year, blah, 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 and we can talk through and kind of give some strategies or whatnot for it, okay? So when we think of numbers, we just think we know what a number is. When kids think of numbers, they have to be able to have all three of these aspects in order to understand what a number is. And a lot of times they get to that symbolic piece and they can understand or count just like when you do the alphabet, LMNOP. They know 5 comes after 4, but they don't have that quantitative piece that goes along with it. So just, I know we start at 2nd grade for you guys doing the tutoring, but a lot of times these are those like missing pieces, kind of going into piggyback off of what you were just talking about, that first few years of life type of thing. So fluency is a big thing. But the thing with fluency is it's more than just being quick. There's also that flexibility piece to it and being efficient and being automatic with it. But the flexibility piece is probably one of the bigger of the 3 elements to being fluent that a lot of kiddos are missing out on. When they see that number 5, they just see it as a 5. And to get them to be flexible, to see it as a 1 and a 4 and a 2 and a 3, and then the flip makes them, then as they move on and they see 50, they can look at it as 40 and 10 or 25 and 25. So on the left, these are some addition strategies. It doesn't necessarily have to go top to bottom, but there are reasons and a lot of researched reasons for doing those addition strategies on the left. I think as you get down, does it make sense when that's implied when you're reading it? Yeah. So when you get down to like within 10, so they would be adding numbers that are under 10, or make a 10 is a huge piece, because having things that are in decades, then they can use that representational piece with them as they move on to multiplying and even dividing. Also, I think going down then after that, like plus doubles, and then doubles plus 1 and doubles plus 2, some kids will do it, and some kids won't. Like 8 plus 7, some kids will think of it as 7 plus 7 is 14 plus 1 is 15. Other kids might look at 8 plus 7, take 2 from the 7 to make the 8 a 10, and then there's still 5, and so 10 and 5 make 15, so that's that make a 10 piece. So just that flexibility, we're like, yeah, it's 15, you know it's 15. But to have them see it and then use it representationally, and then like all of us around the table can do it abstractly. On the right side is suggested order for multiplication. This is how our resource suggests to do the multiplication. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to follow that. A lot of times when I work with kiddos, we just talk about times 2 is that doubling piece, or adding that same number twice. And then if you work your way down, all of a sudden some students are realizing that, oh, I really just don't know. I know my 9 times 5 because I know my 5s, because 5s are super quick to know. But my 9 times 6, 9 times 7, 9 times 8, 9 times 9, those are still difficult. But they always like to start back at square 1. 9 times 1 is 9, times 2 is 18, times 3. But if they know that 9 times 5 is 45,
So, I'm curious, is this the way that it's taught? And why is it in this order? Like in times 2,
their familiarity with it, because when you're in kindergarten, you double things in first and second grade. If you count by tens, when you're in second grade, first kindergarten, counting by fives is something you do. So I think those are why those are, like, it makes them feel confident that they can multiply, because they've been multiplying.
You just didn't know.
They just didn't know. So, and then the 1 and the 0 is more, it's placed there for property purposes, like the identity property and the 0 property. Because if you tell kiddos, if you make 0 your first one to talk about, again, they don't have that connection of multiplying, that if I have 5 of something and I have no way to give it to, then my answer is going to be 0. But if they have those connected points with the 2, 10, and 5, it makes the 1 and 0 go quicker. Yeah. So this is what I was a little bit referring to. The CRA is an acronym. Everything in education is an acronym. Concrete, representational, and abstract. In this specific picture, it has the number 2 as like a visual, but that's basically what it's coming down to, is you're visually representing what that concrete model is on the far left. So I'm going to go into detail for each one of those. Don't feel that if you're working with 5th and 6th graders that you can't pull these things out because they're too young for them. You must. You have to. You need to, because this is that piece that didn't come before the cart or the horse to get them to kind of paint a picture in their mind of what they're missing type of thing. So again, on the far left is one of those 10 frames that we were just talking about that I showed you. That little yellow, this is called Rec and Rec, and it's grouped in 5s, so it doesn't slide as deep. It's grouped in 5s, and then it's also color-coded with the white and the red, and then the kids become very familiar with this. So, like, that's just pony beads and wire. And the kids can use this for addition, for subtraction. Some kids, because they're so used to using this, we even use this for multiplying. So we would look at just one bead as being like a group of 3, and then we would count by 3s, and then get to that 15 mark, and then that's where the struggle is sometimes for kiddos. So adding another group of 3, another group of 3 type of thing. So I mean, it can be used in more ways than not also. And then off to the far right there is just another example of some hands-on manipulatives. Then after that is the representational piece, which basically they're taking, if you notice what the concrete was, and now you see the representational, they're basically taking it and mimicking or drawing out that 10 frame on the far right, where they're doing the beads on the far left, and then just showing it as a representation. And then this would be what we try to strive for quicker than what should be strived.
So the representational piece brings the numbers into it. It's, it's kind of getting them to think about the equation.
Not looking at 18 just on something like this, but also having that 18 with it. Making the connection. Yeah. And you do see, like, on the lower right there too, I mean, you can, that itself is considered abstract. The number line is abstract because kiddos don't have that complete connection of space between each of the numbers, and that there's actually numbers in between those spaces. So that's kind of more of a abstract way of using some type of strategy. Let's do this. This was our education. Flip and multiply, the butterfly method. the turtle head, you know, all of those types of things that like, what does that really mean, you know? So we just need to remember that a lot of times the strategies that we're providing them, if they don't see it themselves or come back to you and say, hey, and then you're thinking in your head, I've been doing this for the last 7 weeks, and now you're telling me that you just understand this strategy. That's the whole point, though. That's the whole point. This slide here, and I'll give you all, Amber has talked about this, and I'll give it to you, but there's an actual video. If you click on that slide, on that little cog there, and it's a pretty cool video. It's from a math guru that I follow often. His name is Graham Fletcher, and it's just, he talks about math while illustrating, and it's just, it brings it to life. It really does. So it's like a 7-minute video. So his 7-minute video is what follows this number sense trajectory. Talking about from kind of younger on, the subitizing piece is like, if you think of a dice, rolling dice, like you can visually see that what a 5 is made up of, how a 6 is on the dice, rather than seeing the number that goes with it. This is difficult to read. But then it basically goes on and talks about how counting after counting is 1 to 1, and then cardinality is that I counted out 5 objects in my hand, and I like to answer your question that I have 5 objects and not count them again to tell you what the answer is. And then the last would be that number conservation, that when a 5 is a 5 no matter how it's looked up. So. And then this too, and this is something else that I have. I don't know what technology you like, and I maybe should have asked that before, or maybe Sam, it's just something that you'll be able to tap into. But you're more than welcome to, as volunteers, to tap into this site. But again, this is off of the resource that we use at school, and it has some really neat, like warm-up activities, like which one doesn't belong, and the kids really struggle with that one because it's like say it's a picture of like 4 oranges. One's peeled, one's not peeled, one's cut in half and peeled, and another one is just cut in half all by itself. And the kids want to know, well, which one is it? Well, really, all of them don't belong in some way or another, but it's just getting them to be able to voice and have that conversation. So there's a lot of cool warm-ups for those. And once we know students, a lot of times what I'll do too for a 4th grader is I might tap into some 2nd grade activities, or for a 5th grader I might tap into some 3rd or 4th grade activities. So keep that.
So if we have Chromebooks, because we're going to be getting Chromebooks,
okay.
would it be appropriate for Sam to say, all right, this is the skill we're working on, and this is the warm-up they're going to spend, let the volunteers know, okay, get the Chromebooks out, or she'll have them out and say, first 10 minutes is warm up this activity, and she has it up?
Yeah.
That would work?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
Stacey, what are the Moby Maps or there's all different types of websites that the teachers will use to help with math? I know that I recognize math in there, so are those things that you suggest that we have our students use as practice as well?
So I have in the next slide, I have some examples for you. But you know, channel through Sam, channel through me, be in touch and ask, you know, whatever it works. But I think consistency and routine, if you have that like warm-up time where you would work with numbers, I mean, maybe it's even as simple as just throwing dice and timing it by 2, adding it and timing it by 2, and doing that for 3, 4, 5 minutes. I think that the more that we can have those kiddos be flexibly comfortable with numbers, then the more success that they're going to see across the mathematical board. You know, if you have a kiddo that you know is a struggling reader, pull the reading out when it comes to some kind of story problems or something that's in context, and you do the reading for them. I mean, there's been so many times when I work with kiddos that if I just orally read it, even if the numbers in the hundreds, they can solve their problem. But if it's sitting in front of them when you said it, they're just gonna, it's an automatic, like a tap on the dog ringing the bell and like, oh, it's a story problem. I have one of those sons at home. Always bring your story problems home. Well, I don't believe on that. I understand better. So, it happens everywhere. And then the other slide.
Yep.
And then these are all like little things, and I mean, for the most part, and Helen and Caitlin can testify, like, this is what I walk around with all day. You know, we'll read a story problem and I'll say, okay, well, what are you thinking about? And then you start drawing it out right away. And I draw it out right away. I don't go to, oh, you're thinking 3/4, oh, you're thinking 1/3. I mean, I draw a bar and make 3/4, color it in, and you'd be amazed. You would be amazed. This is another, and I would not suggest to go here immediately. But these are just simple skip counts. So if the kiddos, it's almost like a never pass skip count. So if they had 7 times 8, then they could, you know, what I've been doing is try to have them start here and know that this is 7 times 5, and then they've got another group of 7, 6, 7, 8, and then they come up. But this would not be something if they're just introing to see how many guys on the times. This would be something that I would do if they're just starting that. I mean, this would be maybe some 6th graders, depending upon who it is too. A lot of times I do card games if you're running out of things, but I do a lot of card games and I just take out like the skips and the what are the other ones? Reverse, draw 4, and then I just use them, you know, to be playing multiplication war with them, or even the younger ones play make 10 instead of go fish. They would do go fish, make 10. So if you had a 2, you would ask me, do I have an 8? Because that makes 10. So, I mean, and that's, you know, this was an old, deck that didn't have everything in it, so.
When you playing the multiplication war, what is that?
Multiplication war, it would just be just like regular war. You can do it a couple of different ways. You could do multiplication war where you flip and I flip, and then we multiply it, and whoever's quicker at doing it. Now again, this wouldn't be for somebody who is just there. This would be somebody, and I sometimes tend to pick and choose which cards I want to multiply by so that they're getting used to it. So if I got 18, or I can flip over 2 and you flip over 2, and then I multiply my 2 and you multiply your 2, but then you have to check each other, you know. Yeah, so it's just a variation.
I've played before too, where like you flip over your card and you are always multiplying by the same number. Like
There you go.
We're new times 2 multiplication mark,
Perfect.
and then whatever your thing is, you have to say the correct answer, and then whoever's answer is greater, like more.
Yep.
Whatever you're picking
Yeah.
much facts.
Yes, and the nice thing about doing it that way is if you have somebody who has to work on 4s, you're constantly multiplying by 4, you know, and then you could almost bring in that skip count. Because what I've done with littles is like when we're playing the go fish, make 10 or something like that, before we even start, I have my whiteboard, and we talk about what are the partners that make 10. So then they have that visual representation there of the abstract number, and then we're also trying to find those 2 cards together that make 10. So, some games I've already provided to Open Door, but there is a part of our resource, they call them workplaces. I mean, they really are educated games. But what the kids do do with them is they'll do them when they're like towards like the end of their math block, so they'll do them at the end. But my struggle is those kiddos who are struggling need more repetition of this game, more time on this game. If I play this game with Helen, I know he's just gonna win it, so I'm not gonna put the effort into it, or I'll just mock everything that he is doing because I know that he can do it quicker than I can. But those kiddos who need 5, 10, 12 times of practice on it, that's the nice thing about being able to come here on a weekly basis, is for them to be able to have a little bit of that confidence and extra, and then like you said, like send them off like, now tomorrow, you know, when you play this, or this week when you play this game type of thing. And these are all digital too. So Sam, just so you know, our resource has 8 units, and we do about a unit a month.
Okay.
And then that Math at Home site that I gave you will have that on there. And then I'll show you another site that we're going to do. We're going to take a peek at. All right. So what I ended up doing is, I'll just use this as an example and then we'll move on right away to 2nd grade. But I wanted to start at kindergarten because again, we have so many kiddos that this piece might not really be there. You know, if you talk to some of your students about the number 13 or about the number 15, be curious to know what they would say about it. Like, what is it made of? How else can you do it? How else can you make it? So this is the major work of kindergarten that the kiddos do throughout the whole entire school year. And then these are all links. Put a little disclosure down the bottom, because if it's not working, I don't know how many times I got up from my computer and ran to my husband's computer and I'm like, could you move so I could just check this out real quick? Because you know how you do it on your own computer and it works, and then you go someplace else and it's not working. So you'll see that there's a little bit of similarities for each grade level, but the top one is going to be that Math at Home site from the previous one. Tang Math is just another, he's got some really neat games, and that's like a K-6 situation. The number 3 one, that would be just for kindergarten, but it might be helpful for some of our kiddos. The number 4 link is all of the workplaces that the kids use throughout the school year. They're all digital, thanks COVID. So you can go ahead and use them to your discretion there. Sometimes we will just use them because we'll just use the spinner on there, but then use the actual hands-on like board or whatever they have. I understand why we have that, but I tend to just use that idea and then make the printout and have the hands-on to be touching it. And then the bottom one, virtual math manipulatives, that's the same thing too. Like there's timers on there, there's counters on there, there's shapes on it. I mean, it's just full of hands-on manipulatives, but it's in a digital format. So what I did do is I printed for, not for each of you, but for all of you to, where do I have it? So, like what the major work is. So if you want to just throw that up on your wall, and then you have a bit of an idea, and then you guys will have access to these slides. So major work of 1st grade is definitely starting with the story problems and adding and subtracting within 20, understanding a bit what place value is, and then measuring length indirectly and by iterating the length. So the length units is almost starting them to think about that if this is a unit, that same unit is next to it, and then that gets you on that multiplication step too. Kind of start moving them along that way. And then again, those are the similar sites. ST Mysteries are different. I threw that in for 1st grade, but then had that continued on. Those are really basically it's like Like he always has like a vase. Helen, do you remember these? It's like a vase and there's like objects in it. And then there's all these clues that make you like try to solve how many are in the vase. So it helps them, the ST part of it is the whole estimation. It helps them with all their estimation skills. And so again, that could be a warm up or that could be like at the end. You could even do it like whole room if you wanted to, you know. For second grade, again, just kind of moving along. And the same thing is, I think the big thing in second grade is that place value flexibility. Because in second grade, it's adding and subtracting within, they have to be fluent adding and subtracting within 20, but they have to know how the beginnings of adding and subtracting within 100. So there's a little bit of that ungrouping and regrouping, but again, that would be all with the visual context piece of it. Can I, if I click on here, will it open up to a site?
It might. Guess I haven't tried it. Give it a try. Oh.
If I go out the window here, will it go?
Probably will, and then you can just Chromecast it from that video.
So I know you have to have it.
Oh, I bet I'm just.
Hold on. I don't know if it'll Chromecast from the site though. Will it? Now what do I do?
Sometimes it does.
Oh, that would have been fun. Sorry about that. I probably can do it somehow, but I don't.
She's got my computer along, so I'm gonna try it on my computer.
Well, I just wanted to just kind of show the site to you, because it's set up in a way that it's skill-based. So there'll be like a set of problems that are just on the skill of multiplying, and then there'll be a set of problems that are just on the skill of fractions type of thing. So I just wanted to kind of just see what the overview is.
Do you want me to try to pull one up or?
Sure, I'll have to share it with you. But in fourth grade, story problems get a little more complex. The big thing too between third grade and fourth grade is multi-step story problems. So the kiddos might do some multiplying, some smaller multiplying at the start of their problem, and then they might have like a larger addition piece to add to it at the end of the problem. And then the other big push in third and fourth grade is starting to build the foundations of fractions in third grade, and then actually understand that a fraction is made up of unit fractions. And I think that that's very abstract for kiddos. But I also think that if we supply them with enough hands-on resources and ability to kind of pull problems and numbers apart and put them back together, that they'll see how those problems or how those fractions are made up. Like there's an example there, the 3/4. And we never thought growing up that 3/4 was made up of a fourth and a fourth and a fourth. We just did 3/4 with 3/4. Because that's what you're supposed to know. So, and this basically goes through for fifth grade, talking about place value and decimals. And then having a little bit of volume in there, which volume shouldn't be any kind of scary thing to do because it's the multiplying that they're doing, length times width, but then they're adding those stacks of whatever that is on top of that very first bottom base piece that they're using. Do you guys have, like, you want to go through some stuff? Do you want me to like model anything, or where is knowing what you've had as students and struggles, like, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about the fifth graders, and we're working on fractions, and they're getting stuck on multiplication.
you know, like a multiplication fact. So I always struggled with,
So you're talking about like common denominator.
correct, so I'm trying to get them to, you know, get the common denominator, what do we need to divide it by, and we're spending our time trying to figure out what's a 7 times 8 mean. So I guess my struggle is always, is it more important in that moment for them to get the practice on doing the fraction problem? And obviously, like, they need work on the multiplication, but I get out those cheater ones, the cards that we have where it's like 1 through 12 and 1 through 12, and like you, and I kind of brushed through on that, but and then at some point said like, okay, let's work on multiplication. But that's where I get stuck, is like you're working on a more advanced problem with these older kids, but you can really see like there's 2 mathematical issues that you need to
So
solve.
one nice thing about the setup this year is I'm hoping you will have less of being like a homework helper and be more of that foundational skill, like just working on skills. I do have another, like it's called milestones, and this might just be helpful, like to have up, but like as a kindergarten student, these are problems that most kindergarten students should be able to do and understand by the end of kindergarten. And I have that math milestones that goes like all the way through. So what does a